Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are very excited to be talking to you about the also recent release, Bob Odenkirk vehicle, Nobody. Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. And as you said, this was a pretty recent release. March 26th is when this hit theaters. I don't want to pronounce the name of the director because I don't think I can, so we're just going to skip over that. But anyway, Emmy winner Bob Odenkirk, Better Call Saul, blah, 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 stars as Hutch Mansell, an underestimated and overlooked dad and husband, taking life's indignities on the chin and never pushing back. A nobody. When two thieves break into a suburban home one night. Oh, this is a really long synopsis. I should have read ahead on this. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So let's just tell him. We'll just tell him what it is.
You know, they break into his home. He doesn't fight back. He feels like a wimp. And it turns out he's far from a wimp. And he later fights back and hilarity ensues. So it co-starring with him is Connie Nielsen, Christopher Lloyd, RZA, Michael Ironside, and so on. So what did you think?
I liked it. I like Bob.
Okay,
Odenkirk.
the end.
Sorry, I didn't love it. But it was entertaining enough. It was enjoyable. I feel like if I had my ability, my wish, like if I could kind of woulda, coulda, shoulda, a few things different about it, I would have. This is an interesting Bob Odenkirk vehicle. Right? I mean, so this is new. We spoil these movies. So if you don't want to hear everything that happens and you whatever, go watch it. Don't listen to us. But that being said, so the reveal, of course, is that he's some sort of elite special forces badass, right? Like he's just kind of a John Wick character.
And let me stop you for 1 second. This is the writer of all of the John Wick movies.
Okay.
Which I've not seen any of those. Have you seen any? I can't remember if you said
I've seen them, and that makes a ton of sense because it's baloney. And I like a lot of movies that are baloney. So, I'm not, doesn't have to be a documentary, but there's just something in the tone of it. It's going for like fun guns and fist fights and stuff. I think the action is actually pulse quickening and entertaining. I think what I'm trying to put my finger on is there was something about the kind of, so there's a couple points where plausibility took me out of it. So this guy is sort of an I don't remember how he described himself. He's not like a fixer, but he's like a super elite. Like as far as the government's concerned, he doesn't exist anymore, right? He's literally nobody. But he's a super trained killer. And the red herring at the beginning is that these kind of inept burglars break into his house and he and his son kind of get the drop on him, and he has an opportunity to clobber the female burglar who is holding a gun, which felt implausible to me, but he has an opportunity to clobber her with a golf club, and he doesn't. And so his son and a cop and like everybody looks at him like, oh, you empty man, you impotent wimp, right? And then his kind of hangdog thing, we're supposed to think, oh, that's how he thinks of himself too. But in pretty short order, I guess is it on the bus? In pretty short order, he sort of snaps, and then we're supposed to realize, oh no, he's like a recovering addict for this, ultra violence. Like he really wanted to beat the crap out of these two people that broke into his home, but he's trying not to mess people up. Right? He's trying to be the suburban dad and father and live that life, which I've arrived at the big implausibility earlier than I intended to, I think. But that was what he's like, I was going to kill a guy, and then instead I let him go, and I followed him expecting him to be like doing bad stuff again. But no, he had a wife and kids, and they were all sitting around the table and helping his kids with his homework. And I'm like, no. And he's like, I wouldn't have ever believed it would have happened. I'm like, because it's not plausible. But he's like, so then I thought I could have that too. And I'm just like, I don't know. That's a big, if you want to tell me that when the universe was created, 5 infinity stones that control, I'm like, that is just so stupid that you either say, I'm going to turn this off and leave, which my wife would have done, or I'm going to say, okay, whatever. Like, please don't talk about them anymore. And just, I'll choke that stupid piece of bologna down and we'll go from there. But in this one, I felt like, maybe if the idyllic life he was trying to lead wasn't quite so LL Bean catalog suburban, I mean, it's not implausible for me to think that he had a family, right? I don't know. But the John Wickiness of it is, like in the John Wick movies, there's like this league of assassins and this whole shadow guild of underground. You're just like, I didn't read the books, but in the movies anyway, it just feels corny.
Were those books?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, Shakespeare wrote them.
They're adapted from Shakespeare.
But they're in there because it's supposed to be fun. And I just found it distracting. Like if you're going to do, there's a whole genre of movie that's like revenge movie. And it's like, I think of Mel Gibson or, something horrible happens. So somebody takes his daughter or somebody murders his son. And then it's just a bloodbath of this person clawing his way up the criminal ladder, offing bad guys, bosses, until you get up to the big boss. Right. And that's the whole catharsis of this movie, is pent up, I want to say white male rage unleashed. And I think this kind of falls into that, except it's Bob Odenkirk. And it is funny sometimes. It's certainly not the funniest thing Bob Odenkirk's ever done. I don't know. I've been talking this whole time. What did you think of it?
So as I said a few minutes ago, I've not seen any of the John Wick movies. So if I had, I probably would have gone into this with a little bit of a different mindset. And this is one of these things where it's my fault and not necessarily the movie's fault in a way. I was expecting a more serious film than this. It'd been a while since I saw the trailer, but I expected it to be somewhat cartoony, but I was with this for about the first half hour or so. So you brought up the thing, this couple breaks in to his house, and I was already starting to laugh, even though I was with it, because everything is so telegraphed from a standpoint. He is so emasculated. He's got the next door neighbor with the hot rod car, and okay, he's going to take the guy's car at some point. There's scenes where I assume this was on purpose. It really stood out to me. But even he's standing next to his wife, and his wife like towers over him. And I just thought to myself, his wife could probably beat him up, not knowing take away he's the special forces guy or whatever. But so they, when they break into his house, they take his watch, and he thinks that they stole his daughter's kitten bracelet, because there's a scene where she's like, I can't find my kitten bracelet. And that kind of sets him off to go after them. So he goes to the home of this couple, and he holds a gun to their head, and he's like, I want my watch back, and where's the kitten bracelet? And they're like, we don't know.
Right. He hunts him down. He sees a tattoo on her wrist.
Right.
So he goes
and he
looking
goes
from
around
tattoo
to
parlor to
tattoo
tattoo
places,
parlor.
yeah.
He goes looking for that tattoo and finds it.
So he then, he's holding them at gunpoint, and he hears a baby cry. And he goes to the bedroom where they have this baby, and the baby is hooked up to oxygen. So he realizes, and he says even before that he knew these people were scared when they were in his house. So it was like he wasn't going to beat them up or kill them because they were just desperate people or whatever. So he realizes, they have there's poor people with this sick baby. And I'm thinking, maybe there's going to be a little bit of depth to this. And then they never come back to that. There's nothing ever again. I mean, I guess that's to show that he's somewhat human. So then the next scene is he leaves there and he's on a bus. He's so emasculated that he doesn't even have a car. His wife's the only one with the car, right? He can't drive the car. He's got to ride the bus everywhere. I mean, it's just so ridiculous how.
And he works at his brother-in-law and father-in-law's, like,
and he's
metal
just
working
numbers,
they have some construction thing.
And his brother-in-law is like this tough guy, that it's
and
just so
the son
ridiculous.
is doing a project on a veteran, and he's asking his dad about being a veteran, and his mom says, why don't you ask Uncle whatever, he was a real soldier or something. I mean, it's we get it. They are just keep heaping it on. And the cop comes, he's like, you didn't even take a swing at him? Oh, if it was
as if family, a cop would say that,
because that's
somebody.
how cops talk, right?
So,
and that's what loving couples with a sick baby do, is they get a gun, they don't load it, and they go burglarize a suburban household, because that's how you get money for your baby. Like, human beings don't do these things.
A relative
don't
of
say
mine.
That.
That was so ridiculous. I was laughing at that. A relative of mine, one night, he used to walk he was like a night owl and used to walk his dog late at night. And he had his laptop like in his kitchen, and it was right in a window where, like, if somebody walked by, they could see it. So it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He's walking his dog. He hears glass break. He runs back. A guy has broken out his window and jumped in to grab his laptop, and he goes in after the guy, and the guy takes off. Anyway, gets away. He calls the police, and he tells them what happened, and the police are like, you should never do that. They were just like, just let the guy take the laptop and don't go back in the house. The guy could have killed you, So, I mean, that's what a real life cop is going to do, right?
Right.
So anyway, the next point we get to, but even with this ridiculousness, I'm still with the movie. And so then he's taking the bus home from the apartment or whatever of this couple, and they're at a stoplight or whatever, and this Range Rover full of Russians crashes. They're all drunk. They get on the bus. Russians. There's a young woman on the bus. They're gonna assault her or whatever, and then he's just like, oh, now I'm gonna F these guys up. He takes his gun and drops the bullets out and everything, and just shows them yeah, that doesn't have any, and proceeds to
he gets everybody off the bus.
Yeah.
He gets the driver off the bus, shuts the door, pulls a gun out, empties. So they're all still sitting there looking at him. The girl is still on the bus, empties the cartridge, Go ahead.
So anyway, so he just proceeds to, beat all these guys up, but they throw him through the side window, and he gets up from that and everything. But still at this point, that was well choreographed, and it's ridiculous, but it's, whatever. But then it turns out that, he messed with the wrong people because they work for this Russian oligarch or whatever. And so then it continues to just escalate and escalate and escalate and then I was just like, it's like, okay, I'm going to turn my brain off and watch the silliness. But I don't know. I mean, it could have been a little bit grounded, but it just turns into a cartoon at that point, you know? And again, maybe that's my fault that this wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't know it was going to be this ridiculous and cartoonish. And honestly, Bob Odenkirk is kind of the only thing that saves this to me. If this would have starred, you know, Mark Wahlberg or Vin Diesel, it would have been unwatchable. You know,
I liked Christopher Lloyd in it too.
Yeah, Christopher Lloyd and RZA, and you have a very brief scene with Michael Ironside, who's almost unrecognizable. I mean, I hadn't seen him in a long time, but if I didn't know it was him, I don't think I would have known it was
He's
him.
The father-in-law. Yeah. He doesn't really do anything, but he's
he's not. He doesn't get to be Michael Ironside. I don't know why you put him in to just be a grandpa, you know? But so I was, and the thing that's amazing is I just feel like this is one where, wow, I'm really out of step with other people. It's like a 7.4 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes has an 84%. I mean, on the one hand, I'm happy I really like Bob Odenkirk, so I'm happy for him to, you know, get this. And it's also what I talk about so much on this show. It's a movie. It was a $16 million budget. It made 55 million. And so they're making a sequel. So, you know, it's nice that a lower budget movie that's not a horror movie is able to do that. But I just didn't like this very much.
And you know that the sequel will be the same. It's not, I don't object to the violence.
It's just the silliness that bothered me.
It's the tone. It's the tone that I mean, I feel like it's made for a much younger, I want to say 15-year-olds, but it's too mature. I mean, it's the violence is too, but it's aiming at that kind of high school. Like they lay it on so thick as though they think the audience is not going to be paying attention or is too stupid to get it. Like there's many different ways you could have told this story where it felt less silly, less cartoony, where maybe you tried harder to make the family feel plausible and you made all the little emasculating cuts, right? If it's really about this guy who misses the life, didn't think he was going to miss the life, but misses the life, I think there's a lot of interesting human stuff to mine there because it's morally complicated, maybe less so in a theater of war. But in suburban America, you know, there's a lot of complicated stuff of vigilantism and thinking you're above the law and not caring and realizing this is not good for your family, but discovering that you want to do it anyway, right? I mean, there's a lot to wrestle with there. And that doesn't have to be like Oscar, you know, Oscar bait drama, but it also, you could lose some of the, like, it had one foot in a comic book world, and John Wick does too, where it's like, yeah, but it would be cool if there's like a league of assassins. And I'm like, I don't need that to enjoy a movie like this, but
no,
it's very clearly part of the whole conceptualization of this type of story, right?
Yeah.
And then I you know, I feel like it was just beating a dead horse with the emasculating, like, oh, you didn't even take a can, the guy with the car. And then so Odenkirk, like at the end, steals that car and hotwires it and has this moment where he like repeats what the guy said to him. Like that's been a slow fuse burning in him the whole time. And then I thought, well, then Odenkirk isn't the right guy to cast for this.
Yeah.
Right? Like if that's what you want, then maybe a Mark Wahlberg would have been a better, you get the sense that, oh, well, you think you're better than me? Like going on in that type of a character that Odenkirk doesn't, I'm not saying he's incapable of it, but he doesn't bring to this. He nails the hangdog stuff. Right. But he nails the hangdog stuff so well that it makes the special forces stuff feel, Like he clearly went to the gym and he got toned up and he's in good shape for this.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just because we have come to see superhero movies and everybody needs to look like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine to be plausible as a, martial arts person, but he doesn't look capable of doing. The choreography is great and he executes it. But when he's like got his shirt off and he's like patching himself up, you don't buy it. You're like, this, you could lift a guy. You can throw a guy through a window. I mean, what do I know? But I'm just by what movies establish what we expect in movies today. And this is a cartoony enough movie that Bob Odenkirk just looks like a regular guy. He doesn't look like. I mean, we constantly see the Mark Wahlbergs who are pumped up. They put him in glasses and a tie, and he's just supposed to be the regular guy. He just looks like Mark Wahlberg in a suit.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like anyone I know. He looks like a guy who spends a lot of time in the gym.
Mm-hmm. And I don't, and this is me more than the movie, I guess, but I don't understand the need with modern action movies. We have comic book movies, we have superhero movies. You can make action movies without them being superheroes. The movies that we had in the 80s were ridiculous to a degree. And it's not necessarily fair to compare this movie to something like Die Hard, which is an action classic. But you watch Die Hard and you think, okay, probably this guy would get killed, right? But it may be humanly possible to be on top of a building and tie a fire hose around your waist and jump off. But it's not possible to be in the trunk of a car that runs into a light pole or whatever it is, and everybody else gets killed, and he gets out and jogs home. I mean, it's like, can you not put a little bit? I mean, I know suspension of disbelief and all that, but can you not put a little realism in it? I don't know. Again, that's what modern action seems to be,
To me, I don't know. It's a quibble. I feel like we've been super negative the whole time, but I mean, I rolled my eyes several times during this, and I sort of, prudishly tisked my tongue, being like, "Oh, you didn't need to do it that way." But I like Bob Odenkirk. I do think he carries the movie, and I think that the action sequences are really well executed. And I did, I think for a certain audience, if the litmus test is, would you sit down with, your date who's also into this and a big thing of popcorn and enjoy it? I'm like, yeah, probably. I mean, I did. I never got bored. I never felt like I wanted to turn it off. All of these are kind of like,
no, it's 90 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like a comic book nerd being like, Batman wouldn't do that because Batman is, I'm like, I just felt like, it's not how I would have directed or executed this material. I'd have swum against the cheesy current of ham.
I thought with Bob Odenkirk, maybe it would be, again, I can suspend my disbelief and I don't want to nitpick everything and all that. And I know action movies are, we watched Rambo and all that stuff, but it's just, you get to a point of, like I say, where they're superheroes rather than even any plausibility of being a human, and I thought, with Bob Odenkirk, you can have a guy that it's like, he's going to get, beat up and, I don't know.
And it was the Russian mob. I'm like, not the Yakuza?
Yeah.
I mean, I just like, it can't just be, I don't know, some bad
could
guys,
have done
a gang, or I mean, it's got to be a Russian mob, and that comes with the gold chains and the shiny suits and accents that are thicker than the sole of your shoe, no, we must not take far from man. And you're just kind of like, wow, we get it. We get it. We get it.
And, you could have done and I realize, this is a niche film that we did that, didn't make 50 or $100 million or whatever, but you could do a kind of a Blue Ruin, a little bit more, of a crowd pleasing Blue Ruin, where it's like all these people break into his house. He doesn't have, he whatever wimps out and doesn't stop them. And then he goes and, takes out his revenge, and then their family comes after him, and they're humans, and they're no match for this guy with all this special training. Instead of he kills 50 people and, they're, I don't know.
And he looks really beat up. Like the movie spends a lot of time showing him taking a licking, but keeping on ticking. And yet, like, it doesn't seem to actually live on him. Like, if anything, there's almost a kind of a, like, he wants to get the shit kicked out of him. Like, in some ways, he's so fast on the attack, but he feels almost like he's leaving himself open for these guys to, like, throw him through a window. I mean, he gets the tar beat out of him. And yet, he's still able to, like, jog home out of their trunk. And it's like, it's like a superhero movie in that regard. Like, he's all bruised and nicked up, but it doesn't break his ribs. He doesn't break a bone. It doesn't mean he's hurt. It doesn't slow him down at all. He's hurt for 30 seconds and then he just keeps on going. Yeah. And in the next scene, he might still have the makeup, but there's nothing to it. And I think it would be interesting, even if you explored. So you just spent more time peeling the onions of the characters, right? Like, yeah. And his wife kind of comes to acceptance pretty quickly. And you wonder, well, how much did she know about this guy? That was another thing that was silly to me, is for a while, I thought maybe this would be like a True Lies, where it's like, has this totally secret life that she doesn't know about. She's just always known him as this meek, guy. And that's why they don't sleep together anymore, because she's just not attracted to him now because he's a wimp or whatever in her mind, Yeah. But and that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, by the way. Yeah. Right. But you know what wimp. I'm saying, Yeah. But with this, that would have been plausible, that, like, he had this life that she knew nothing about and nobody else knew anything about, because it's just be like, this guy is this badass, he's just this little skinny guy. But after he fights the guys on the bus, he comes home and she stitches him up, and it's like, oh, it's just like old times. So she knows some or all of what he was involved in. And she's not like, oh, you could have taken out the robbers with, one hand tied behind your back, and you didn't, what I mean? It just, that didn't make any sense. But I think you could have done it without slowing the movie down at all. And I think it would have made the whole thing a lot more interesting. Yeah. A lot more. It would have just added this depth. I think really that very thing is what keeps me scratching at it. Is that I don't really mind that it's silly or stupid. I thought the movie was fun. Yeah, I wished they'd have just honored the material that they had. Just go ahead and because you've got good actors here, and let them go deeper. Good. Let them go deeper. No, that's fine. Moving on is what it felt like, and I'm like, no, let it be a better movie, And there was more than one time in the film where, he's in an alleyway and it's raining, and I just thought, wow, that is a really nice shot. It's a good looking movie and everything. Yeah. So technically there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I don't know. There was one moment that I thought was a cartoony moment, but I actually really liked also, when he's going from tattoo parlor to tattoo parlor, with a little, cocktail napkin diagram of what he saw on the robber's wrist. He goes into one pretty shady place, and they kind of lock the door and deadbolt the door behind him. And there's some heavies, and there's a guy behind a counter, and there's an old guy. And it's clear that they're going to mess him up or roll him. It's not clear why, other than
if you ask questions in a tattoo parlor,
and he's vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of closing the circle around him, and he's holding out the diagram, and the old guy, who's wearing, like, I don't know, Nam or something, notices on Odenkirk's wrist that he's got this kind of little tattoo of two playing cards. And the old man recognizes the tattoo. And I really, it's a funny moment. His eyes go wide and his face goes pale, and he stands up, and as he's sort of shoulders by Bob Odenkirk, he's like, "Thank you for your service." And he just, guy was like egging these young guys on to, like, kill this turkey or whatever. And then he goes and he, like, locks himself behind another big door. And there's a window, and he's like peeking through the window while he watches. And then all the other guys are like, they see this, and then the other, the
like,
sort
who
of
the hell is this
boss
guy?
is like, "How can we help you?"
Yeah.
They all just take their cue from the old guy not to mess with them. So I mean, when it works, it works. It's just
I think there's some, it's just kind of weird how they sort of divert from what the path that it kind of seems like they're taking in the beginning. Like, I was thinking, watching this, a friend of mine told me a story that he took martial arts lessons for years and years and years. And when he was in college, he was in a bar with a girl, and there was a guy who was drunk in there and came up to them and started kind of bothering the girl. And my friend said, "Hey, leave her alone." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to." And, like, took a swing at my friend or grabbed him or something like that. So my friend said, and he's not like a big imposing guy or anything like that. You look at him and you think, like, "Oh, this guy, wouldn't hurt anybody or anything." But he said it was just like reflexes. He grabbed the guy and kneed him right in the head. And it knocked the guy out cold instantly. And he said it was nothing like the movies at all. Nobody cheered. Everybody stopped. He thought he'd killed the guy for a second, because the guy just is splayed out on the floor, and just everybody stopped in the bar. It was like the record scratched or whatever. And they're just like, "Why did you do that?" And they called the police, and, he had to talk to the police and everything. He didn't get arrested or anything, but he was just like, it was horrible.
Yeah.
So I think you could do somewhat of an interesting thing and still have an action movie with a guy who is so highly trained that it's like, oh, he's a deadly weapon, so he's got to restrain himself, because just regular burglars or whatever are no match for him. You know what I mean?
Well, and also, like, again, we don't need to make it a totally different movie, but I think there's enough public awareness of PTSD, and that you've got very fertile material here to mine. And I don't, it doesn't need to be Born on the 4th of July, but elements of that, like, what made the guy want to stop? He wanted a wife and family. Okay. Why specifically? Like, let's get into some of that. How did he meet his wife? What's their relationship? How much does she know? When is he in control, and when is he slightly not in control? All of that's really interesting. And an actor like Bob Odenkirk, I think, it makes that stuff not only look effortless, but he brings a real, I think part of what makes him a great comedian, a great comic actor, is the shades of subtlety he's able to paint with. Because, like, and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are really masterpieces of modern television. But it's on full display there, right? I mean, in a single scene, he can go from begging for his life, and you're really afraid he's going to die, and he's really afraid he's going to die, and that lands. And then it can flicker into something funny, and it can take a turn, and then it can go into the absolutely absurd, and it's this spinning kaleidoscope. That's not easy to do. I mean, no, that's excellent writing, and that's very good directing too. But I mean, there's a reason why they picked him for the spinoff, because he's great.
Yeah, for sure. The first, and again, he was a cartoony action star and all that, but the first Rambo movie, First Blood, is an interesting, it's a fun action movie in a lot of ways, but also it's this kind of exploration of this guy who's this killing machine who doesn't really want to do any of that anymore, but he's pushed to the limit, and has to, you know what I mean? And you could put a little bit of that in a movie like this, I don't know. It just, again, I think that's a me problem and not the movie itself.
No, I think you're right. I mean, there's a whole thing you could explore on just, our society's conception of what, that suburban male, right? He's not the breadwinner, his wife is. These expectations that we have in our society that, of course, not everybody feels subject to, but I think a lot of people do. And maybe they're putting that on themselves, and maybe them and their spouses are putting it on each other.
Yeah.
But it's a thing. And it doesn't need to be a big cartoony thing, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be the henpecked husband. There's other ways to show that this guy is pressurized. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, would I recommend it? Yeah. I mean, all that being said, I think it's an okay popcorn movie. It's not my favorite. I liked seeing Bob Odenkirk do something a little more physical. I think he pulled it off. I wish that it had run deeper, because I think he felt a little bit in shallow waters here, and I thought that was a shame. Like, this guy is capable of doing some really three-dimensional stuff. And this is pretty two-dimensional material as presented.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would kind of give it a marginal recommendation as well. I mean, once after about that 30-40 minute point, that I just was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to get the movie that I was hoping it was going to be. So I just went with it. And like you said, it's entertaining. I mean, just as a ridiculous popcorn movie. And again, I guess people who are into the John Wick movies, if you haven't seen this one, if you like those movies, you're going to like this, from what I understand.
Probably. I feel like they spent more money on those movies. That
16 million is a pretty low budget, and I would imagine, I'm just guessing, but maybe the first one they didn't spend a lot, but they would have had to have spent a good bit just to get Keanu Reeves in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure the budget's
pulls in Keanu money.
No. I'm sure the budgets probably went up as they went along, so I don't know. And they're going to make another one, and I don't, I might watch it, now that I know what I'm getting into.
I have a hunch it's going to be more of the same, but jacked up.
Yeah, and that's what they always do.
They're going to jack up the parts of it I didn't like.
Yeah.
So that's my hunch.
There's going to be almost none of the, like, any little bit of nuance that it had in the beginning. It's probably just going to all be gone,
Well, we'll see.
Let me just tell you something real quick. I don't know if you saw about this or not, but along the lines of action and a franchise that to me started out pretty grounded and just got sillier as it went along, Lethal Weapon. I don't know if you saw or not, they're making another Lethal Weapon, and Mel Gibson is going to direct it, because Richard Donner died, and Richard Donner, before he died, was they were planning to make another one. And he told Mel Gibson, I think he knew he didn't have a lot of time left, I guess, and was like, hey, you're going to direct this. And he was like, no, you're going to be around or whatever. So Mel Gibson has, he's going to, I mean, it's in production, I guess. And they're coming back. And the thing that's hilarious is Danny, I was reading some about it. In the original movie, Danny Glover was playing 10 years older than he actually is. So if they go by the timeline of the movie, which I'm sure they wouldn't be, he would be 80. So, and it's like, I mean, it's really going to be, we're getting too old for this shit, you know?
Oh, man.
But, you know, whatever you say about Mel Gibson, he can direct. So it would be
Right.
interesting.
I don't think his talent has ever really been the issue.
No, not at all. I mean, but, you know, that could be, I'm sure it'll just be a giant cartoon movie and a big joke, because that's what they do with these sequels. But again, that is you could do something pretty neat with that, I think, you know.
Sure,
And
you could. I mean, it's a classic buddy cop.
Yeah. But I doubt that'll happen. I figure it'll be really silly. So,
well, they're making a fifth Indiana Jones.
Which I think we've talked about this a couple of times on here, but I hope it's just not a total cartoon thing. You know, I hope he dies at the end. That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm in the minority on that. And I'm sure Disney isn't going to do that, but it would be nice if it is, you know, the first one is a serious movie with some jokes. And by the time they get to the end of that franchise, it's just a comedy, you know. I don't know why they always do that with franchises, but it would be, you know, it's going to be funny. But and what is his name? James Mangold, who's directing it, you know, because Spielberg's out, which I think is a good thing, because I don't think Spielberg wants to do those kind of movies anymore. And, you know, Mangold is a really good director.
Yes, he is.
Know.
Especially when you let him off the leash.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Logan was great.
Logan was great, and great. Ford versus Ferrari was great.
You know? It was really good. Really good.
So he can do drama and he can do action. So, and it's at this point, I'm just glad that we're going to get another Indiana Jones movie while Harrison Ford's still alive. I don't even care if it's not great, you know, but I don't know. So kind of along those lines, would you want to talk about Baby Yoda for a minute?
Sure.
So, again, spoiler, it's finished for a couple of weeks, but did you enjoy the finale of the Boba Fett show?
I was going to say about the Indiana Jones franchise and a little bit about the Star Wars franchise. I never, when I was younger, thought I would get to the point where I sort of had my fill of it.
Mm-hmm.
But having just gone back and rewatched all of the Indiana Jones things, and I think it's just the age I'm getting to, you know, and now there's a whole arc of the Skywalker thing that happened in the next movies. And I've enjoyed all these movies, but I think I'm just to the point where I'm kind of like, you know, I'm not going to say I won't go see it as a movie, but I'm not sitting here. You know, there was a time in my life when I was like waiting for these things to come out, and
3 years between.
Now it might be that I might watch it, but I might wait until it's streaming. You know, I don't know, just to check it out. But the but on that is this Mandalorian thing and the Book of Boba Fett spinoff they're doing that fills in that time frame that's more familiar with the first three movies, fleshing out that era and in the way in which it honors it. Like, I don't think we should do any Boba Fett spoilers if we can avoid, but there's so much fun they have with bringing back creatures and little side characters and bringing in characters. There's a character they bring in from the animated Clone Wars cartoon series. So only real Star Wars diehard fans will have watched that stuff. But it still has got great characters in it. So this guy shows up live action and you're like, whoa, who is this dude? And some people are like, well, yo, it's this dude, you know, but it's fun either way because it's just got it. There's this richness to it that you're like, I bet a lot of people know who that is, even if I don't. And you're right, because they wouldn't bring in a featured thing like that. Like, they pluck all these little fan favorite gems from the way back and weave it into the story. And I am loving it.
Yeah. I have to admit and I think it's interesting because I think they've maybe painted themselves into a bit of a corner, because I initially was into the Boba Fett show, and then I started to get kind of bored with what was going on. So you've got basically the first 4 episodes are the Book of Boba Fett. And then I don't think this is a spoiler at this point to say that towards the end of the season, so 5, 6, 7, the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda come back. And that I was just like, okay, I love this. And it's almost kind of like, they needed, obviously this is what they planned all along, but it was almost like they brought Mando and Baby Yoda in to kind of save the show. You know what I mean? And so now you have, like, for example, my sister, she's 6 years younger than me. And we saw Return of the Jedi together in the theater. She was a little kid and I was a little bit older. She loves The Mandalorian and was really not all that interested in watching the show. And I said, just skip to episode 5. You don't really need to watch the first 4 episodes if you don't care about Boba Fett. And she's like, okay. And then, she was really into it at that point. There was a little bit that she's kind of, but you can watch the recaps or whatever. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm not sure and they said the viewership was up 36% for the finale of this over the finale of Mando. So, there's definitely going to be a second season of Boba Fett. I don't think this is just going to be a limited thing, and they're not ever going to bring him back. You know what I mean? It's like, can Mando as a show survive without Baby Yoda? He's going to be in the next season, apparently. And can Boba Fett survive without Mando and Baby Yoda?
I don't know, but I like that they are, I like that they're leaving it all on the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was one of the things I loved about The Walking Dead for the first long chunk of it. And I understand it closely followed the comic books, but this is true. So you go to the source material. People that you loved died all the time reading that comic. Like, and you'd be heartbroken. And so that was reflected in the show, but you'd be like, oh no, what are they going to do now? And they would introduce a new character that you would fall in love with. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it kept you always caring. Well, for a long time, it kept you caring, and nothing can go 10 plus seasons without getting a little soft in the middle. Writers leave, showrunners leave, star gets big, stars can't get paid anymore. You know what I mean? Stars don't have the hearts in it, whatever. Nothing goes on forever. But The Mandalorian, I really was like, well, you brought back Luke Skywalker. What are you going to do for season 2? And they're like, oh, it's going to be about Boba Fett. And I was like, no way. And so what are they going to do for season 3? As long as you can keep me delighted, I'm in. Inevitably, they're going to get to look. There's one episode where it followed the Mandalorian, and he was like with the other Mandalorians, and I could care less.
Yeah,
there's like a woman one, and she's like, "Here is the philosophy." I'm like, "Shut up." Yeah. Nobody cares what you're saying. Who are you? And then there's a big guy. I'm like, oh, he's the big one. He's the big man. Like, nobody cares. This just feels like filler. But I mean, the whole thing is pretty short on the filler, really. So as long as there aren't like, I mean, even Game of Thrones, there was I love that show. There was whole episodes of that where I was like, oh what? I'm like, that was terrible. That was the most boring crap. They just walked around the woods and like there was nothing surprising or interesting in that. And I think if that show hadn't been mostly not that, I wouldn't have stuck with it. But it was mostly not that. But it's like everything falls into that, where you feel like, oh, you got lazy this episode and the main writers were off and you got the rookie writers in to cobble something together.
Yeah. And with this, there were, again, like I was saying, there was some of the stuff with Boba Fett and the Sand People. I was just kind of like, I don't really care about this. But once it really kicked into gear, those last 3 episodes, and as much as I liked the finale of the Mandalorian, the second season of Mandalorian, where they brought Luke in, I liked this even better. And it was just, for old fans like us, I just felt like I had a permanent grin for 5, 6, and 7, and there's stuff that's fan service, but I didn't care. Like you said, there's a creature that comes back that we get to see in the end that we've never seen in this way before. And that was just, I thought was so cool. Just them,
and
Mando.
There's some droids that I thought were pretty cool.
Yeah, some cool droids, but just Mando and Boba Fett in a battle flying around with their jetpacks. I just
exactly what we did with the action figure.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we did with the action figures. We made little movies of us flying them around like, I'm a jetpack. Yeah. And now we see it. And
I think Jon Favreau, I think, is probably around our age. So I'm sure he did the same thing, So there's so much fun. It feels like that they put into this, and now in May you have the Obi-Wan show, which I don't think Jon Favreau has anything to do with, but I'm excited for that, so yeah.
That'll be interesting. I mean, I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm definitely going to have a look.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's wrap this up. Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. Maybe you're watching us on YouTube. Thank you. Subscribe, like. Maybe you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Send us a message,
please.
Yeah. Say something nice. But next time we're going to do The Shape of Water.
Yes,
because I have never seen
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, and it was an Academy Award-winning film, and it's not, it's not an old
Best
classic,
picture.
But definitely want to check that out. So join us on that one for next time.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Other than I do not think that we said that nobody is on HBO Max. So if you have HBO Max, you can watch it for free. It's right there, just waiting for you to watch. So,
and The Shape of Water is on Hulu, I believe, if you're a Hulu subscriber.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't checked to see where it's available, but yeah, I felt like I was a little too harsh on nobody, but it's it's fine.
Sometimes you like a thing enough to kind of pick it apart, and sometimes it's just the mood you're in. And we've had a couple people comment and be like, "Why do you even do this if you don't like the movie?" And I'm like, no, we love the movies. It's just, we just like to kind of get around and snark on it sometimes. Like, it's whatever. I'm not saying we could make a better movie, or that's just part of how we enjoy the movies.
Yeah. It's a miracle that great movies, I mean, you've worked on movies before. So
making a movie that isn't mind-numbingly boring, that's the baseline. Make a movie that is not mind-numbingly boring. That is really hard. Forget funny or great or unforgettable or interest, any of the other good stuff. Just to make a feature-length film that isn't unwatchably boring is crazy difficult to do.
Yeah.
And this wasn't that. This wasn't mind-numbingly boring. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah. And we just gushed over Boba Fett for several minutes. I mean, we like stuff. It's not, I don't want to be somebody. We like things. I don't want to be somebody who just hates everything. And most of the things that we've covered for this podcast, I think we've liked more stuff than we didn't like.
Well, we ragged on this for an hour, and then we both recommended it.
Yeah. So
anyway, yeah, I'm excited to see Shape of Water. I sort of surprised I haven't already seen it, because I like Del Toro, and I don't know. It's kind of sometimes a movie comes out and you're like, oh, I should see that, and you just never get around to it. And then
Yeah. And that's what's nice about doing a podcast. You
That's
have
right.
to watch movies. So
give each other little movie assignments. All right. So unless you have anything to add,
nope.
we will talk to you next week.